The interrogation chamber hummed with a frequency that made my throat sacs vibrate uncomfortably. I shifted my weight between my 3 legs, trying to appear confident despite the sweat beading across my facial ridges. My name is Vorik, and I serve as the primary inquisitor for the Galactic Enforcement Tribunal. In my 40 cycles of service, I had questioned warlords, pirates, and genocidal maniacs without breaking a sweat. But today? Today I was terrified. The human sat across from me, hands folded calmly on the metallic table between us. Captain Marcus Webb. That was the name in our files. 6 feet tall, give or take, with dark hair graying at the temples and eyes the color of Earth's oceans. He wore a simple black uniform with no insignia, no decorations, nothing to indicate rank except the quiet authority radiating from his posture. Behind me, I could feel the presence of the 11 council members watching through the observation screens, their various appendages probably twitching with anticipation. "Captain Webb," I began, my translator chip converting my words into his barbaric language. "Do you understand why you have been brought before this tribunal?" He smiled. Actually smiled. The gesture made my secondary heart skip a beat, because nothing about this situation warranted happiness. "Oh, I have a pretty good idea, Vorik. Can I call you Vorik? Or would you prefer Primary Inquisitor? That seems awfully formal for what I assume will be a lengthy conversation." I blinked all 4 of my eyes in sequence, a nervous habit my clutch mother had warned me about. "You may address me as you see fit. Now, shall we begin with the accusations?" "By all means." He leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. "Though I should warn you, this might take a while. You folks have been keeping quite the list, from what I hear." My claws tapped against the datapad, pulling up the first charge. "6 months ago, your species launched an unprovoked assault on the mining colony of Keltar 9. 17 Vexillian workers were killed, 32 more injured. The entire operation was destroyed, costing the Vexillian Commerce Guild approximately 9 billion credits. How do you respond to these charges?" Webb tilted his head, studying me like I was some kind of curious specimen. "Unprovoked. That is an interesting word choice. Tell me, Vorik, did your intelligence briefing mention what the Vexillian Commerce Guild was actually mining on Keltar 9? I glanced at my notes. Lithium carbonate deposits. Standard extraction protocols. Standard? He laughed, and the sound echoed strangely in the chamber. You call strip mining a planet down to its mantle while pumping toxic runoff into the only freshwater source for 300 miles standard. The Vexillians were using indentured Keltar workers, essentially slaves, who were dying at a rate of about 20 per cycle from exposure to the chemicals. But please, continue telling me about those poor 17 Vexillian supervisors who just happened to be overseeing this nightmare operation. My throat sacs deflated slightly. I had not read that part of the report. Behind me, I heard several council members shuffling in what I recognized as discomfort. The economic damage was precisely calculated to hurt their profit margins without causing widespread civilian casualties. Webb interrupted smoothly. Every Vexillian on that base received a 48-hour warning to evacuate. We even provided transport coordinates to the nearest safe harbor. The 17 who died chose to stay and defend their equipment, rather than their lives. That is on them, not us. I moved to the next charge, my confidence already shaking. 3 months ago, a human vessel intercepted a Draknari diplomatic convoy in neutral space. The convoy was fired upon. 2 ships were destroyed. This is an act of war against a sovereign nation. Diplomatic convoy, Webb repeated slowly, emphasizing each syllable. Is that what they are calling weapons shipments these days? Vorik, those ships were carrying plasma warheads to the Epsilon colonies, where a civil war has been raging for 8 years. The Draknari were arming the faction known for using child soldiers and chemical weapons against civilian populations. We destroyed the weapons. We even let the crews escape in life pods before we blew their cargo holds. But sure, let us call it diplomacy. My claws were trembling now. This was not going according to protocol. The human was supposed to be defensive, angry, perhaps even violent. Instead, he was systematically dismantling every charge with calm precision. I pushed forward to the next item. 2 months ago, your military forces invaded the sovereign territory of the Quilxian hegemony without authorization or declaration. You occupied 3 of their border stations for 72 hours. This is clear aggression. Webb leaned forward, and his eyes grew cold. The Quilxian hegemony was running a trafficking ring through those border stations. Sentient beings, Vorik, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, being moved through those checkpoints like cargo. We received intelligence from 3 separate sources, cross-verified it, and then we acted. During those 72 hours, we liberated 417 individuals from 12 different species. We provided them medical care, trauma counseling, and safe passage to wherever they wanted to go. The Quilxian guards who resisted? Well, they made their choice. You had no legal jurisdiction, I protested, my voice rising several octaves. And you had no moral backbone, Webb shot back. Those stations had been operating for years. Your Galactic Enforcement Tribunal knew about them. The evidence was in your databases. But investigating would have been politically inconvenient, would it not? The Quilxian hegemony has 12 votes on the council. They control significant trade routes. So you all looked the other way while sentient beings were bought and sold like livestock. Silence filled the chamber. I could hear my own breathing, rapid and shallow. Behind me, not a single council member spoke. Webb waited, letting the accusation hang in the air like a guillotine blade. I tried again, scrolling through my charges desperately. 4 weeks ago, a human strike team destroyed a research facility on Mortok Prime. Decades of scientific work, gone. The researchers, many of whom were civilians, were killed or captured. Research facility. Webb said the words like they tasted foul. Vorik, do you know what they were researching? Biological weapons. Specifically, they were engineering a plague that would target species based on genetic markers. They had already tested it on 3 different populations, wiping out entire settlements to study transmission rates. When we raided that facility, we found storage units with samples organized by species. There was a container labeled with human genetic markers. They were coming for us next, but they were certainly not limiting themselves to humanity. We found samples for 17 different species in that lab. My datapad slipped from my claws and clattered on the table. Impossible. The Mortak Scientific Council has strict ethical guidelines, which they ignored. Webb produced his own datapad from somewhere in his uniform and slid it across the table. We copied their entire database before we burned that place to the ground. Every experiment, every test subject, every death. It is all there. Feel free to verify it. Actually, please do. I insist. I stared at the device like it might explode. This was spiraling out of control. The charges were supposed to prove human aggression, human lawlessness, human danger to galactic peace. Instead, every answer revealed systematic failures by the very institutions meant to prevent such atrocities. I looked up at Webb, my 4 eyes unfocused with confusion. Why? Why are you telling us this? You could have claimed ignorance, shifted blame, anything. Instead, you are admitting to all of it. Because I want you to understand something, Vorik. He stood up slowly, and I instinctively leaned back despite the table between us. Humanity did not ask to join your galactic community. We were not invited. We clawed our way up from a single planet, figured out faster than light travel through trial and error, and stumbled into a galaxy full of rules that nobody actually follows. You have laws, procedures, tribunals, councils, all very impressive. But when those laws protect traffickers, slavers, and war criminals because they have the right connections or enough votes, then your laws are worse than useless. They are a shield for evil. We have protocols, I protested weakly. Protocols. He laughed again, but there was no humor in it now. How long would your protocols have taken to shut down that trafficking ring? Months? Years? How many more people would have disappeared while you filled out the proper forms and waited for committee approvals? We did not have that luxury, and neither did they. One of the council members, a Thravian with silver scales, spoke through the intercom. Captain Webb, you speak as if you are morally superior to the entire Galactic Federation. Your species has only been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. What gives you the right to act as judge, jury, and executioner across sovereign territories? Webb turned to face the observation window, addressing the unseen council directly. We do not claim moral superiority. Trust me, humanity has enough blood on its hands from our own history to know better. But we learned something from our mistakes. Something that apparently the rest of you have not figured out yet. When you see evil happening, when you have the power to stop it, and you choose to do nothing because it is politically inconvenient or procedurally complicated, then you are complicit. You own that evil. It becomes yours. A Zephyrite council member, its voice like wind through hollow tubes, responded next. You speak of evil as if it is a simple concept. The galaxy is complex. Actions have consequences. Sometimes, the lesser evil must be tolerated to prevent greater chaos. Lesser evil, Webb repeated softly. Tell that to the 417 people we pulled out of those cages. Tell them that their suffering was acceptable because shutting down the operation might have caused diplomatic tensions. I am sure they will understand. Or maybe tell it to the populations that would have been wiped out by that bioweapon if we had waited for your protocols to slowly grind toward action. I am sure their families will appreciate your commitment to procedure. I found my voice again, though it cracked with stress. But there must be order. Without rules, without structure, we descend into anarchy. Your actions set a dangerous precedent. If every species decides they can take unilateral action whenever they disagree with a situation, the Federation will collapse. Then let it collapse! Webb slammed his hand on the table, and I jumped. If your Federation only functions by tolerating atrocities, then it deserves to fall. But I will tell you something else, Vorik. Something that should terrify you and every member of this council. We did not take these actions lightly. Every single operation was planned meticulously. We gathered intelligence, verified sources, calculated risks, and minimized casualties whenever possible. Do you know how many civilians died in all of our interventions combined? 17. 17 people who were actively complicit in crimes against sentient beings and who chose to fight rather than surrender. Compare that to the thousands who would have suffered or died if we had done nothing. The Thravian Council member spoke again. You admit to operating outside legal frameworks. You admit to attacking sovereign facilities and vessels. By what authority do you justify, These actions? Webb smiled again, and this time it was grim. The same authority you would claim if someone invaded Earth and started enslaving humans. The right of any sentient species to defend not just themselves, but others who cannot defend themselves. You want to call it vigilantism? Fine. But we sleep just fine at night, knowing we saved lives instead of filing reports about why we could not. I looked down at my remaining charges, suddenly seeing them in a different light. The attack on the Vraxian fuel depot that supposedly disrupted commerce routes. Had that depot been supplying ships involved in illegal activities? The destruction of the Kelvin Station listening post that we called espionage, had that post been monitoring civilian communications for blackmail and control? Every charge on my list was probably hiding another story, another justified intervention that the Federation had ignored or enabled. Captain Webb, I said slowly, my voice steadier now, you must understand the position you have put us in. If we accept your justifications, we admit that the Federation has failed, that our systems are broken, that our laws are meaningless. How can we do that? He sat back down, and his expression softened slightly. Vorik, I actually like you. You seem like someone who genuinely cares about doing the right thing. So let me give you some advice. Stop trying to defend a system that is indefensible. Yes, the Federation has failed. Your systems are broken. Your laws are meaningless when they are selectively enforced based on political expediency. Admitting that is not weakness. It is the first step toward actually fixing the problem. And what would you have us do? The Zephyrite Council member asked. Start by actually enforcing your own laws, Webb replied. Every crime we addressed, every atrocity we stopped, you already had laws against those things. You just were not willing to act on them. So either enforce your rules equally, regardless of who is breaking them, or admit that your entire legal framework is just theater. Your choice. Another council member, a Kelvari whose mandibles clicked nervously, spoke up. And if we cannot? If the political realities make true enforcement impossible? Then step aside, Webb said bluntly. If your Federation cannot protect its own citizens, let alone innocent bystanders caught up in your member states' criminal enterprises, then it has no purpose. Humanity is willing to trade with you, communicate with you, even cooperate on legitimate mutual interests. But we will not subordinate our conscience to your politics. We will not look away from preventable suffering because you do not want to upset your power balance. And we will not apologize for saving lives just because we did not ask your permission first. I felt something shift in the chamber. It was not visible, not audible, but I could sense it. The moral authority had completely reversed. Webb was no longer the accused defending himself against charges. We were now the ones being judged, and the weight of that judgment was crushing. This tribunal was supposed to determine if humanity poses a threat to galactic peace, I said quietly. And what is your conclusion? Webb asked. I looked at the charges on my datapad. I thought about all the crimes the Federation had overlooked, all the suffering we had permitted through inaction. I thought about the 417 people rescued from slavery, the populations saved from bioweapons, the workers freed from deadly working conditions. Then I looked at Captain Marcus Webb, sitting calmly in his chair, unafraid and unashamed. I think, I said carefully, that humanity is indeed a threat, but not to peace, to the status quo, to the comfortable arrangement where the powerful exploit the weak, and the rest of us pretend not to notice. Several council members began speaking at once, voices overlapping in protest. Webb just smiled. Finally, he said, someone gets it. The Thravian council member cut through the noise. This changes nothing, Captain Webb. You have still violated our laws. You have attacked our facilities. You have disrupted our commerce. These actions have consequences. Of course they do, Webb agreed. So what are you going to do about it? Declare war on humanity? That would be awkward, considering we could distribute the evidence of your own members' crimes across every communication network in the galaxy. Expel us from the Federation? We were never really members anyway. Economic sanctions? Good luck with that, considering half your member states are already trading with us under the table because our goods are cheaper and higher quality. You are remarkably confident for someone sitting in an interrogation chamber, the Thravian noted coldly. That is because I am not really here as a defendant, Webb replied. I am here as a witness, and also, if I am being completely honest, as a distraction. My throat sacs inflated with alarm. A distraction from what? Webb checked a device on his wrist casually. From the fact that while you have been questioning me for the past 2 hours, human teams have been delivering evidence packages to media outlets, government officials, and civilian rights organizations across 47 different Federation worlds. Every crime we addressed, every corruption we uncovered, every bit of evidence we gathered is now public knowledge. By this time tomorrow, every sentient being in the galaxy will know exactly what their governments have been doing and what your Federation has been allowing. The chamber erupted in chaos. Council members shouted over each other, their translators creating a cacophony of outrage in multiple languages. I just stared at Webb, my mind reeling. You planned this from the beginning. The interrogation, your cooperation, all of it was just to buy time. Not just to buy time, Webb corrected. To make sure you could not claim ignorance afterward. Every word spoken in this chamber has been recorded and will be part of the public release. The people of the galaxy deserve to know that their leaders knew about these problems and chose to prosecute the people who fixed them instead of the people who caused them. The observation window suddenly went dark as the council members cut their feeds. I was alone with Webb now, just the two of us in a humming chamber with my entire worldview crumbling around me. They will kill you for this, I said, surprised by how sad that made me feel. Webb shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe enough people will be outraged by what they learn that the political calculation changes. Either way, the truth is out there now. You cannot put it back in the box. You have destroyed everything, I whispered. No, Vorik. I have exposed what was already destroyed. There is a difference. He stood up again, stretching like he had just woken from a nap, rather than dismantled the foundations of galactic governance. For what it is worth, I hope you survive what comes next. You strike me as one of the good ones. Maybe when the dust settles, we can build something better together. The door to the chamber suddenly unlocked with a hiss. Webb walked toward it, and I did not even think to stop him. Wait, I called out. What happens now? He paused at the threshold, looking back at me with those ocean blue eyes. Now the real work begins. See, destroying corruption is the easy part. Building something to replace it, something actually worth protecting, that is the hard part. But I think we are up for it. Humanity has rebuilt from ashes before. The question is whether the rest of you are willing to do the same. Then he was gone, walking out of the interrogation chamber like he owned the place. I stood there for a long moment, my 3 legs barely supporting my weight. Then I did something I had never done before in all my years of service. I took out my communication device and accessed the human data packet Webb had mentioned. I started reading, and reading, and reading. Each page made my stomachs turn. Each revelation made my secondary heart skip beats. But I kept reading, because Vorik was right about one thing. I was one of the good ones. Or at least, I wanted to be. And that meant facing the truth, no matter how ugly it was. Somewhere in the facility, alarms began to sound. I heard running footsteps, shouted commands, the sounds of security protocols engaging. They were probably looking for Webb, trying to contain him before he could leave the complex. But something told me they would not find him. Humanity had not survived and thrived by being careless. If Webb was walking free in our most secure facility, it meant they had already planned every step of his escape. I looked at my datapad one more time, at all those charges that now seemed so hollow and self-serving. Then I made a decision that would probably end my career and possibly my life. I copied every file, every piece of evidence, every recorded conversation from the interrogation. I sent it to 20 different contacts across 12 different worlds, people I knew who still cared about truth more than politics. Then I deleted my access logs, wiped my communication history, and walked out of that chamber with my head held high. Whatever came next, at least I would face it, knowing I had done the right thing. Just like the humans. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real threat humanity posed. Not violence or aggression, but the simple act of holding up a mirror and forcing us all to see what we had become. The galaxy would never be the same. But perhaps, I thought, as I walked through corridors filled with panicked officials and confused guards, perhaps that was exactly what we needed. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Marcus Webb walked out of that interrogation chamber, and the galaxy was on fire. Not literally, though several orbital stations had experienced what officials nervously called spontaneous equipment malfunctions after angry mobs stormed government facilities. No, this was a different kind of fire, the kind that burns away lies and leaves only uncomfortable truths behind. I was hiding in a cargo freighter bound for the Outer Rim territories, specifically a trade route that passed through 17 different jurisdictions, which made me effectively untraceable. My career with the Galactic Enforcement Tribunal had ended exactly 47 minutes after I sent those files. The arrest warrant came 90 seconds later. Apparently, leaking classified information during an active investigation was frowned upon, even when that information exposed systematic corruption spanning decades. The freighter captain, a gruff Mordanian named Krell, had agreed to transport me for twice his usual rate. He asked no questions, which I appreciated because I had no good answers. Where was I going? No idea. What would I do when I got there? Even less idea. But staying anywhere near Federation space seemed like an excellent way to end up in a cell or worse. I spent my days in the cargo hold, reading news feeds on a scrambled connection. The galaxy was tearing itself apart, but in a strangely productive way. On Vexilia Prime, workers had organized the largest strike in their planet's history, demanding investigations into the labor practices that humanity had exposed. The Vexilian Commerce Guild, facing mounting pressure and collapsing stock values, had arrested 12 executives for crimes against sentient beings. It would not bring back the dead Keltar workers, but it was something. The Quilxian hegemony was dealing with its own crisis. 4 different border stations had been seized by local populations demanding answers about the trafficking operations. 3 members of their ruling council had fled to parts unknown, while the remaining leadership scrambled to distance themselves from what they now called rogue elements. Sure, rogue elements that operated for years with full government funding and oversight, but everyone was suddenly shocked, just shocked, to learn about these terrible crimes. The Draknari situation was perhaps most satisfying. When evidence emerged showing they had been supplying weapons to war criminals, 7 neighboring systems immediately cut diplomatic ties. Their economy, heavily dependent on cross-border trade, collapsed within days. The ruling Draknari military junta tried to spin it as human propaganda. But when 3 of their own generals defected and confirmed everything, even that excuse fell apart. Last I heard, they were negotiating surrender terms with the Epsilon Colony's resistance movement. Turned out that actually fighting a war without external weapons support was harder than they expected. But the real earthquake was hitting the Federation Council itself. 17 members had resigned amid scandal. 23 more faced criminal investigations in their home systems. The Thravian representative who had questioned Webb so confidently during the interrogation? He was discovered to have personal financial investments in several of the operations humanity had shut down. He resigned before they could formally charge him, fleeing to a non-extradition colony somewhere in the Carina Arm. My communication device buzzed. I almost ignored it. Paranoia was an excellent survival tool when half the galaxy wanted you dead, but curiosity won. The message was text only, routed through so many encryption layers that I could barely trace its origin. It read simply, "Vorik, coordinates attached. Come alone. You will want to see this. Webb." I stared at the message for a solid minute. It was obviously a trap. Had to be. The humans had gotten what they wanted, chaos and reform in equal measure. Why would they risk contacting a wanted fugitive unless they planned to use me somehow? On the other hand, I had literally nothing to lose. My career was destroyed, my reputation in ruins, and I was living in a cargo container surrounded by shipments of industrial lubricant. How much worse could it get? I showed the coordinates to Krell, who whistled through his breathing vents. That is the Helios sector. Neutral territory, technically unclaimed. Also happens to be where several dozen human vessels were spotted last week. You sure about this, Vorik? Not remotely, I admitted. But I need answers, and Webb seems to be the only one giving them these days. Krell adjusted our course without another word. 3 days later, we dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a region of space that looked completely empty. No stations, no planets, just the distant glow of a red dwarf star and the infinite black. "Coordinates say you want to be here," Krell announced doubtfully, "but I am not seeing anything on scanners." Then something shimmered into existence, and I felt my throat sacs deflate completely. It was a space station, massive and sleek, with design elements I recognized from a dozen different species but assembled in ways I had never seen before. Weapons arrays, yes, but also docking ports, agricultural domes, what looked like residential sections, even recreational facilities. This was not a military outpost. It was a city in space. "That was not there 10 seconds ago," Krell said unnecessarily. "Stealth technology," I murmured. "Advanced stealth technology. They have been building this right under our noses." A communication channel opened, and a calm female voice filled the freighter bridge. "Cargo vessel Wandering Star, you are cleared for docking at Port 7. Welcome to Sanctuary Station. Vorik, Captain Webb is waiting for you in the central hub. Please proceed directly there upon arrival." Krell looked at me, his facial tentacles curled with concern. "Last chance to back out, friend." "No," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "I need to see this through." Docking procedures were smooth, almost unnervingly so. The station was clearly new, but operated with the efficiency of a facility decades old. As I walked through the corridors toward the central hub, I passed dozens of beings from species across the galaxy. Keltar workers who no longer looked malnourished and exhausted. former trafficking victims, their haunted expressions slowly healing. Even a few Vexillians and Quilxians who seemed to be living and working alongside everyone else without apparent conflict. The central hub was a vast circular chamber with transparent walls showing the stars beyond. In the center stood Captain Webb, but he was not alone. Beside him were two other humans, a woman with dark skin and silver hair who carried herself like someone used to command, and a younger man covered in technical gear who seemed to be monitoring multiple data streams simultaneously through holographic displays. "Vorik," Webb greeted me warmly, like we were old friends meeting for lunch. "Glad you could make it. Let me introduce you. This is Commander Elena Torres, Chief of Station Operations, and this is Jamie Park, our Head of Intelligence and the person responsible for making sure your journey here stayed under the radar." Torres nodded professionally. "Primary Inquisitor Vorik, your files on Federation corruption were instrumental in accelerating our timeline." "Thank you." "I am not a Primary Inquisitor anymore," I said flatly. "I am a wanted criminal." "You are a person who chose conscience over convenience," Webb corrected. "That makes you exactly the kind of individual we need. Walk with me. There is a lot to show you." As we moved through the station, Webb explained what I was seeing. Sanctuary Station was a joint project between humanity and what he called free agents, individuals and groups from dozens of species who had become disillusioned with Federation governance. It had been under construction for 18 months, built in secret using resources pooled from various sources, some legal, many not. "Think of it as a proof of concept," Webb said as we passed through a medical facility where doctors from 4 different species worked side by side. "The Federation claims that order requires central authority, that without their oversight, species will descend into chaos and conflict. We are demonstrating that they are wrong. Sanctuary operates on voluntary cooperation. No member species has authority over another. Decisions are made by consensus, and anyone who does not like the outcome is free to leave." "That sounds impossibly idealistic," I objected. "It would be, if everyone here had not already survived the alternative," Torres interjected. "Every person on this station has experienced Federation justice firsthand. They know what happens when laws exist to protect the powerful instead of the vulnerable. That shared understanding creates stronger bonds than any treaty or enforcement mechanism." We entered what appeared to be a school. Children of multiple species sat in mixed groups, learning together. A young Keltar girl was helping a Zephyrite child with mathematics, while a human instructor supervised. "Education is key," Webb explained. "The next generation does not need to inherit our grudges and prejudices. They can build something better if we give them the tools." "This is all very inspiring," I said, and I meant it. "But surely you realize the Federation will not tolerate this. You have created a competing power structure. They will see it as an existential threat." "Good," Jamie spoke for the first time, his voice sharp and analytical. "Let them feel threatened. The Federation has been comfortable for too long. Comfort breeds complacency, and complacency allows corruption to flourish. We want them nervous. Nervous governments make mistakes, and mistakes create opportunities for change." We reached an observation deck overlooking the entire station. From this vantage point, I could see the full scope of what they had built. Hundreds of people going about their lives, working, learning, healing. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Why show me this?" I asked. "What do you want from me?" Webb turned to face me directly. "Vorik, you are in a unique position. You have seen both sides now. You served the Federation faithfully for decades, believed in its ideals, enforced its laws. But you also saw what it had become, the rot beneath the polished surface. And unlike most people in your position, you acted on that knowledge even though it cost you everything. That kind of integrity is rare. You want me to work for you, I concluded. With us, not for us, Torres corrected. Sanctuary is not a hierarchy. We need people who understand how the Federation operates, who can anticipate their moves and help us stay ahead of them. More importantly, we need people who can speak to those still serving in the Federation, who can explain that there is an alternative to either blind loyalty or cynical resignation. I walked to the transparent wall, pressing one claw against the cold surface. Beyond, stars stretched infinitely in all directions. Somewhere out there, Federation officials were probably planning how to destroy this place. Military strategists calculating attack vectors. Politicians crafting justifications for why Sanctuary Station represented a clear and present danger to galactic stability. If I stay here, I can never go back, I said quietly. That ship sailed when you leaked those files, Jamie pointed out pragmatically. The question is not whether you can return to your old life. That option is gone. The question is what you do with the life you have left. Spend it hiding in cargo freighters, or spend it building something worth the sacrifice you already made. He had a point. Several points, actually. I looked at Webb, at Torres, at Jamie. Then I looked back out at the station, at all those people finding hope in the ruins of their old lives. Tell me something honestly, I said. Can this work? Can a voluntary coalition of refugees and idealists really stand against the entire Galactic Federation? Webb smiled, that same confident expression from the interrogation chamber. Honestly? I have no idea. Maybe we will fail spectacularly. Maybe the Federation will crush us, and this whole experiment will be a footnote in galactic history. But I will tell you what I do know. Every major change in human history started with someone saying the old way was not good enough. Sometimes they failed. Often they died. But sometimes, just sometimes, they succeeded beyond anyone's imagination. The only guaranteed failure is never trying at all. That is not a very reassuring answer, I noted. No, Webb agreed, but it is an honest one. So what do you say, Vorik? Are you in? I thought about my clutch mother, about the values she had instilled in me. Justice, fairness, protecting those who could not protect themselves. The Federation had claimed to represent those ideals, but it had been lying. Maybe these humans and their allies were lying too. Or maybe, just maybe, they actually meant what they said. Either way, I would rather fail fighting for something real than succeed in forcing something hollow. I am in, I said. Now what? Now, Torres said, pulling up a holographic display. We show you the big picture. Sanctuary is not our only project. We have 17 more stations in various stages of construction across neutral space. Resource networks spanning 40 systems. Communication relays that bypass Federation monitoring. Even a few military assets, though we prefer to avoid violence when possible. But violence is still an option? I asked. Always, Webb confirmed. We are not pacifists, Vorik. We are pragmatists. Sometimes the moral choice and the violent choice are the same thing. Sometimes protecting innocent lives requires making hard decisions. The difference between us and the Federation is that we do not pretend those decisions are easy, or that we are somehow above moral judgment for making them. Over the following hours, they briefed me on operations I could barely comprehend. Intelligence networks that had penetrated Federation security at the highest levels. economic initiatives that were slowly undermining corrupt trade monopolies, even cultural programs, artists and writers and performers spreading messages of reform and accountability through entertainment. It was simultaneously brilliant and absolutely insane. The key is maintaining momentum, Jamie explained, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. The evidence drops created a wave of outrage. We need to keep that wave building before the old guard can regroup and reassert control. Every week, we release more information. Not all at once, that would overwhelm people, but steady, relentless pressure that never lets them forget what was exposed. You are waging information warfare, I realized. Among other things, Torres acknowledged, but information is just one front. We are also providing practical alternatives, medical assistance to colonies the Federation has neglected, trade agreements that bypass exploitative middlemen, protection for whistleblowers and reformers. We want people to see that the Federation is not inevitable, that other options exist. A communication alert interrupted us. Jamie pulled up the incoming message, and his expression shifted to something between concern and grim satisfaction. It is starting. The Federation Council just voted on an emergency resolution. They are declaring Sanctuary Station and all affiliated operations illegal entities. Any system providing us aid or shelter will face economic sanctions. Let me guess, Webb said calmly. The vote was not unanimous. 47 for, 32 against, 18 abstentions, Jamie confirmed. The coalition is fracturing. Some systems are breaking ranks. Good, Torres said. A divided federation is a federation that cannot act decisively. How long before they move to military action? Intelligence suggests 3 to 5 weeks, Jamie replied. They need time to build political consensus for an attack. Most member species are reluctant to engage in open warfare, especially when public opinion is so volatile right now. Webb turned to me. Vorik, you understand Federation military doctrine better than most. If they do attack, where will they hit first? I considered the question, my tactical training reasserting itself despite years away from active military thinking. They will target your resource supply lines. Sanctuary can survive independently for a while, but your expansion projects need constant material support. Cut those lines, and your growth stops. Then they will attempt a blockade, isolating you while they rebuild political support for direct action. That matches our analysis, Torres confirmed. We have contingencies in place, multiple supply routes, hidden stockpiles, alternative production facilities, but it would help to have someone who thinks like a Federation strategist running war games against our defenses. You want me to help you fight the Federation military? I asked, still processing the implications. We want you to help us avoid fighting them, Webb corrected. The best military victory is the one that never has to be fought. If we can demonstrate that attacking us is either too costly or too politically damaging, they will look for other solutions. That requires understanding how they think, what they value, where they are vulnerable. An alarm suddenly blared through the station, a sharp pulsing sound that made my secondary hearts race. Jamie's holographic displays exploded with data. Contact! Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the perimeter. Configuration matches Federation assault vessels. 12 ships total. Heavy weapons configuration. That was faster than expected, Torres said, her voice tight but controlled. Battle stations. Initiate defensive protocols. And someone get me a communication channel to whoever is commanding that fleet. The observation deck transformed. Transparent walls suddenly filling with tactical overlays and sensor data. I watched as Sanctuary's defenses came online, weapons ports opening, shield generators humming to full power. But what struck me was the coordination. No panic, no chaos, just smooth professional responses from a crew that had clearly trained for exactly this scenario. "Channel open," Jamie announced. "It is Commander Thex of the Hegemony First Fleet. He is demanding our immediate surrender." "On screen," Webb ordered. A Quilxian face appeared, all mandibles and cold compound eyes. Commander Thex looked exactly like what he was, a career military officer following orders without questioning their morality. "Unidentified station. You are in violation of Galactic Federation law. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with lethal force." Webb stepped forward, his posture relaxed despite the 12 warships aimed at us. "Commander Thex, this is Captain Marcus Webb of Sanctuary Station. We have no interest in conflict. We are operating in unclaimed space, violating no legitimate territorial boundaries. Stand down your weapons and let us talk like rational beings." "You are harboring fugitives and operating illegal facilities," Thex responded mechanically. "This is not a negotiation. Surrender now, or we will open fire." "Interesting," Webb mused. "Tell me, Commander, how many of those 12 ships in your fleet are currently experiencing minor system malfunctions? Weapons targeting slightly off calibration? Shield harmonics not quite synchronized? Nothing critical, just enough to be noticeable?" Thex hesitated, his mandibles clicking nervously. "What are you talking about?" "Check your systems," Webb suggested. "We will wait." The communication channel muted as Thex consulted with his officers. Jamie grinned, pulling up his own displays. Remote access protocols worked perfectly. "We have been inside their systems since they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Not enough control to do real damage, but enough to make them very uncomfortable." "This is insane," I muttered. "You hacked Federation military vessels?" "With help," Jamie admitted. "Turns out a lot of people who maintain Federation systems are sympathetic to our cause. They left us some back doors. Perfectly legal from a certain point of view, assuming you ignore about 40 different security regulations." The channel reopened. Thex looked significantly less confident now. "What did you do to my ships?" "Proved a point," Webb replied. "Commander, your vessels are currently compromised. If we wanted to, we could disable your weapons, shut down your engines, maybe even vent your atmosphere, though we would never actually do that because, unlike some organizations, we do not murder people to make political statements. But the capability exists. So let me ask you a question. Do you really want to start a shooting war with people who can shut down your ships with a few keystrokes?" "You are bluffing," Thex said, but his voice betrayed uncertainty. "Am I?" Webb gestured to Jamie, who sent a command. On Thex's ship, every light flickered for exactly 3 seconds before returning to normal. "That was us being polite. Next time, we might not be so gentle. Or here is a better idea. How about you take a message back to whoever sent you? Tell them Sanctuary Station is not going anywhere. Tell them we have capabilities they have not begun to understand. And tell them that every aggressive action they take will be met with responses designed to embarrass, rather than harm, because we would prefer to make them look foolish than make them into martyrs." Thex's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in Quilxians. "The Council will not accept this. The Council is currently being investigated for corruption across half their member systems," Webb countered. "Their authority is questionable at best. Maybe instead of threatening us, you should be asking your superiors why they are so desperate to silence the people exposing their crimes." "Just a thought." "This is not over," Thex warned. "No, it is not," Webb agreed. "But it does not have to end in violence either. Commander, You strike me as someone who joined the military to serve and protect, not to become a tool for corrupt politicians. Think about what you are being asked to do here. Think about why. Then make your own decision about what kind of officer you want to be. The communication channel closed. For a long moment, we all watched as the Federation fleet held position. Then, slowly, they began powering down weapons. "They are withdrawing," Torres reported, surprise evident in her voice, pulling back to minimum safe distance and holding position. "They will be back," Jamie predicted, "with more ships and better preparation." "Probably," Webb acknowledged, "but we bought time, and time is what we need most right now." "Vorik, what did you think of our first diplomatic crisis?" I realized I had been holding my breath, all three of my lungs burning. "I think you are either the bravest people in the galaxy or the most suicidal." "Possibly both," Webb laughed. "Probably both. But we are still here, still standing, and they are the ones retreating. That has to count for something. Come on, let me buy you a drink. We have actual Earth whiskey in the commissary, traded from a freighter captain who was very grateful for some engine repairs we provided. You look like you could use something strong." As we walked through the corridors, I noticed people celebrating. Not wildly, but with quiet satisfaction. They had faced down the Federation military and won, not through violence but through preparation and moral clarity. It was a small victory, but in that moment it felt enormous. "This cannot last," I said to Webb. "Eventually, they will find a way to hurt you, to hurt all of us here." "Maybe," he agreed, "but in the meantime, we keep building, keep helping people, keep proving that their way is not the only way. And maybe, just maybe, we inspire enough others to stand up that the Federation cannot suppress them all. Change does not happen all at once, Vorik. It happens in small moments, individual choices, acts of courage by ordinary people who decide they have had enough. We are not trying to win a war. We are trying to start a movement." In the commissary, he poured me a glass of amber liquid that burned wonderfully going down. Around us, residents of Sanctuary shared meals and stories. Species that had been enemies now sat as neighbors. Victims becoming advocates. The broken learning to heal. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. "To the future," Webb said, raising his glass. "To making it worth the cost," I replied, touching my glass to his. The war was just beginning. The Federation would not go quietly. There would be battles ahead, losses, setbacks, maybe even ultimate failure. But in that moment, sitting in a hidden station surrounded by people who had chosen hope over cynicism, I felt something I had not experienced in years. Purpose. Not the hollow purpose of enforcing unjust laws, but the real kind. The kind that comes from knowing you are on the right side of history, regardless of whether history remembers you. Whatever came next, at least I would face it standing with people who believed that things could be better. And sometimes, belief is all you need to start a revolution. The rest, as Webb had said, was just details. Painful, complicated, dangerous details, but details nonetheless. The galaxy would change. It had to. And I would do everything in my power to make sure that change led somewhere worth living. That was my new purpose, my new mission. And unlike my old one, this time I believed in it with every fiber of my being. The future was unwritten. Time to pick up a pen.